Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7. Now today, got another balance adjustment for you guys. That's right, taking a look at this, of course everybody wants FCC, and Smilegate says, oh, we heard you guys, we heard you. Judge Kise. Yes, another Judge Kise buff on the way. Now, I'm just joking here, guys. Just to set the tone, if you guys are new to the channel and you're watching me for the first time with these balance adjustment previews, I like to be very objective with my takes on this, and I like to be very realistic and grounded. I don't put any of my emotional takes on this, right? I'm not here to overly hype things or to overly downplay things. I'm just here to take a look at the unit's kit on paper, theorize what they might look like in practice, but in most cases, it's really just a wait and see type of situation. I know there's a lot of heat going on with Pirate Captain Flan right here. She is one of my favorite characters in the game and I use her very regularly, but I'll get to my opinions on her in a bit. If you need timestamps to any certain unit or artifact getting buffed, of course, check out the timeline down below, but let's go ahead and get started. So Judge Kise, Lionheart Cermia, Pirate Captain Flan, Abigail, Alencia, and Shooting Star Achates are getting buffs. We also have Otherworldly Machinery, which is a really old artifact, but hey, glad that it's going to get a little bit of a tweak, although it's probably not going to be super impactful. And we also have the Fan of Light and Dark, which is kind of cool. Kind of should have been like this to begin with, but again, we'll talk about those artifacts later. So, starting things off, we have Judge Kise. Now, she has seen so many iterations of her roles being kind of adjusted, right, throughout the years, or at least in recent months. She's been made into an opener, but then she wasn't fast enough, and then she was made into a debuffer, and then she really couldn't consistently apply those debuffs, and now they've kind of gone full circle, and we're like, you know what? We'll just make her a damage-dealing cleaver again. So, helping out cleave and aggro teams a bit more, as you can see here. Her S3 just got some extra damage increases, which is fine. It's actually pretty good that she is getting this. This will be the cleaving skill, right? The S2 is something that will set up for the S3. So you're gonna notice that she actually doesn't have her soul burn anymore, no more granting extra turns. In fact, now she can soul burn to ignore effect resistance, which is actually kind of crazy, seeing as they reworked this this little skill here. The debuffs are still the same. There's still a 100% chance, actually no, they're not 100% the same. There's a 100% chance to decrease hit chance for 2 turns, change from the unable to counterattack, right? And she still has a 75% chance defense break for 2 turns. So the defense break is obviously what you want to land. Because it's AoE, because it ignores effect res, they just made it a little bit lower chance, 75%, still not too bad. Hopefully you land the defense break on 3 out of the 4 units on the other side. And whoever doesn't get defense broken, if it's a DPS or if it's a counter unit, hopefully you decrease their hit chance so they can't screw you over, right? Now speaking of counterattacks, the opponents can't counterattack against this skill, which is great. You just go ahead and soul burn S2 if you want to, ignore res, apply the defense breaks, come with an S3, and just annihilate everything. Now, she does take an extra turn to get this S3, because instead of soul burning to grant that extra turn, you can now just increase combat readiness by 25% per target. There's no requirement to crit or anything of the sort, which is actually pretty nice. Now, the only downside to something like this is that, yeah, you're going to get harmed by Abyssal Euphine and Fire Politis on the other side. Those 2 units will make things a bit more difficult. But yeah, otherwise I think Judge Kise's rework, hopefully this is the last one that she's gonna need for a while. It looks like they're just gonna double down on the, yeah, let's just make her go ahead and deal more damage. You could run things like Circus Fantasia if you want to build up some effectiveness, if you don't really want to rely on the soul burn, but there's so many different mages that you can incorporate into cleave and aggro teams now that you should have the souls, right? And of course, Frida being a thing too, hopefully that can help as well. Could probably synergize with her, giving her the soul burn while also giving her the attack buff. But anyway, moving on here, if you guys have opinions and takes on this, if you're aggro cleave players, let me know what you think of the Judge Kise here. I think we just have to wait and see what the damage multipliers are going to be for that S3 before we can really determine how she is. All right, next up, we got Lionheart Cermia. That's right, she's back. I remember several balance patches ago, people were like, why is Lionheart getting a buff? She did not need one, but now I can kind of understand why she's getting this one. This Lionheart buff is actually taking away all of her fighting spirit. I know, it's kind of crazy. Remember the last time they took away one of these meters? That's right, it was with DDR. They took away DDR's focus bars and they allowed him to have cooldowns on his skills, which made for some pretty insane meta changes. Now, I'm not saying that Lionheart Cermia's changes are going to be as meta as DDR, but keep in mind that they kind of went with this fighting spirit system for a reason, right? You can't abuse the cooldowns that are on Lionheart Cermia. So let's get to that after we go over the changes though. All the fighting spirit things are removed, right? No fighting spirit at all, no consumption, no gain, okay? And instead of this combat readiness increase here, we're seeing it being moved around a little bit, right? This is actually going to be put onto her shine effect. So, without any of the fighting spirit, she has a 4-turn cooldown on her S3, and she begins the first battle with full cooldown count. So she can S3 right off the bat, just for free, okay? What's changed is basically when she activates her S2, which is still once every 2 turns, she still takes an extra turn, by the way, on that S3, so you can cycle pretty easily. You can pretty much always proc it. It just fully resets the skill cooldown. You also gain the 20% combat readiness in this extra effect here, so that's also pretty notable, right? Before, this combat readiness gain would be obtained even without the shine activating, but now you have to activate shine to get this combat readiness gain. It's not something that's super impactful, but do keep in mind that if there is something that prevents you from activating a skill, let's say a bind debuff is on Lionheart, then yeah, it'd be something that's, you know, you kind of have to keep in mind. Alright, but anyway, moving on here, Lionheart Cermia's overall performance is probably gonna improve. One, you can use her into ML Politis now, because she dual attacks and she's pretty annoying, and she can't stifle Lionheart's fighting spirit gain. Now, the other thing that she's gonna be usable into is Elvira, who also just happens to shut down fighting spirit, but she happens to have an extra attack in her kit, right? Both of those units being released so close to each other killed Lionheart Cermia from the meta. Like, you really don't see Lionheart use that much, because if you try to use her and pick her early as a DPS unit, you get shut down, right? Ban Protect ML Politis or Ban Protect Elvira if ML Politis wasn't already picked early as the first pick anyway, right? Lionheart's gonna struggle. So this is gonna be really good for her. Now, speaking of cooldowns and abuse that can happen, you can potentially, and I saw people floating this idea around, I thought it was pretty funny, so I'd share, you could run Creation and Destruction on her. Creation and Destruction allows you to, after using a skill, you can reset the cooldown of that skill, so you can Lionheart Cermia S3 and then reset the cooldown and take the extra turn and then S3 again. It can be really funny. The chance to proc it is obviously going to be pretty low, but it's an older artifact. Some people might have plus 30 variants of it, and some people might just want to give it a shot. So if you get S3 twice by Lionheart, then you know what happened. But Lionheart Cermia, I think she's going to be fairly strong. I mean, this is great. People can use her again. She has that beautiful skin from the recent RTA season. So hopefully you guys will be enjoying, you Lionheart Cermia lovers out there. But yeah, nothing else to really say about her. I think she's going to be pretty solid. There's a plethora of extra attack, dual attack, counter attack units in the current meta, and I think she can fare pretty well. Alright, so moving on here, we have Pirate Captain Flan. So you see here, didn't really have too many changes, right? Sort of. I mean, there's only 2 boxes here, but it's pretty major, right? It's a pretty major rework to Pirate Captain Flan. Now, a lot of people were saying that this unit was nerfed. Let's take a look at the facts here with what changed. So Pirate Captain Flan's S1 had a 75% chance to steal a buff whenever you attacked an opponent. Now she has a 75% chance to decrease defense for a turn, which is pretty solid, right? Decreased defense is obviously really strong right now, especially because ML Ilanov is around and she nullifies defense penetration. Defense break, though, decreasing defense, still works against her. So this is a pretty good way of kind of, you know, controlling the tankier teams while also providing your team an opportunity to deal extra damage. So defense breaks Always nice. The problem here that people had is that the soul burn for an extra turn was removed. I actually really love the soul burn for an extra turn. It's changed now. You only need 10 souls to increase the chance to 100% and decrease defense for 2 turns instead. It's actually not bad that it's just 10 souls for this, but it does seem like a downgrade, right? That is until we hit her passive, Scourge of the Sea. Now, she used to get a flat 50% effectiveness increase. That's why Pirate Captain Flan's sitting around 200 effectiveness. It's pretty good. So most people will probably build 150 extra effectiveness. She gets that 50% extra effectiveness by default, and then she's going to be very high effectiveness. You can kind of just control a lot of units you wouldn't be able to control otherwise. It's a pretty good threshold. This helps her hit a good threshold, right? That's going to be changed so that she just gets critical hit resistance by 70%, just like Navy Captain Landy, right? The other thing is she used to damage share with the person in the front line, right? Kind of like an escort buff, but only with the frontline unit. It doesn't matter who it is, doesn't have to be a knight, it could be anybody that she shares damage with, which is good, right? But that is going to be gone, and what we also see here is that she gets this combat readiness push for the team removed as well. So she used to, if she had a buff when you attacked with the S1, she gets to push up people's combat readiness by 15%, as a non-attack skill can be activated every 2 turns. Now, after the buff, when the enemy has a buff, okay, after using a skill, you activate Time to Pillage. So this is no longer requiring her to have a buff, it requires the opponent to, and this can be activated once every 3 turns. Time to Pillage, and this is really cool thematically, I actually do love this, it grants the buff Pillage, and it increases effectiveness of all allies for 2 turns. So 50% extra effectiveness is getting added back here, essentially through a buff, right? Through a buff here, which is not too bad. Pillage, it says, after attacking, you can steal 1 buff from the target. Now, keep in mind the wording here, okay? By stealing 1 buff from the target, okay, this buff is actually applied to everyone on your team. It's pretty big, okay? So Pillage basically allows you to single attack, AoE attack, extra attack, dual attack, counter attack, any of those things. It doesn't say it has to be on your turn. The only restriction is this only applies to heroes, so you can't use her against, like, I guess PvE bosses, right, and steal their buffs. Not that that ever would really apply here, but yeah, this is really game-changing. This basically turns everybody on Pirate Captain Flan's team into a unit that can strip buffs from the opponent, and also the plus side of gaining it for yourself, so you're not only taking it away from your opponent, you're actively benefiting from it, like a true pirate would, right? So it's pretty cool thematically. It's really cool in practice too, because as someone who uses Pirate Captain Flan a lot, right, Pirate Captain Flan's main weakness is immunity. If the opponent has an immunity buffer, you are really hard pressed to do anything, right? You can't do anything with Pirate Captain Flan. The S1 to steal a buff was only a 75% chance. If they had more than 1 buff, the chances of you stealing the immunity was pretty much next to none, right? And the off chance that you do actually land the 75% chance, you still have to go through a 15% check. So kind of sucks in that regard. Now, Pillage, obviously, you can get resisted with this. It's not guaranteed, but she does give the whole team a 50% effectiveness boost, kind of like what DDR does, right? So Pirate Captain Flan here is going to be a great team player now, a good utility for the team. And then she had a little bit before with this 15% combat readiness and stuff, but that also made her very susceptible to some random things here and there, like Earth Selene, for example. So do keep that in mind, right? This also Pillage, by the way, just the wording with this, it just says after attacking. It doesn't say after successfully landing a hit, right? So technically, if you go up against like an evasion unit, like Selene that has an evasion buff, if you hit her, as long as you attacked her, you have a chance to steal that buff from her. At least going off of this wording, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, in the comments down below, or we just wait, maybe there's a translation error, something of the sort has happened in the past, but Pillage is looking to be very strong. I think this effectiveness buff here is going to balance out her 50% effectiveness loss here. Yes, it's a buff, yes, it has a duration, however, it is pretty it is pretty good, right? All the upsides you can get from pillage, be able to steal more buffs, be able to protect her even more. Now, I have a very tanky Pirate Captain Flan. My Pirate Captain Flan is like 20k health, maybe 14, 15, 1.5k defense, something like that, I think. She is very, very tanky. And the problem with Pirate Captain Flan has always been that she gets focused down. Nobody is going to fight a Pirate Captain Flan and let her live, because they know once that immunity expires, right, or if she takes a turn and they don't have immunity or don't have really good cleansers, they are screwed. You cannot take a turn. She will lock down your entire team. Now, the fact that you lost a soul burn to grant an extra turn, which did come in clutch from time to time, right, that might hurt her ability to be like a super solo control unit, like a DPS kind of control, but again, you get the upside of getting that defense break. You do get the upside of turning your entire team not only into buff strippers, but also some pseudo damage dealers, right? Defense break's no joke. Even units like, let's say you're running an Albedo or something alongside of her, you can still deal some pretty good damage just because your opponent's defense broken, right? Scales really well with her bombs too. You're going to deal more damage with her bombs and her burns. It's pretty nice. The critical hit resistance, the reason why I brought up my bulk, is that the critical hit resistance, the 70% here, is huge. I know it's a gamble, but for most players who are using her in a tankier kind of team, you're going to be running Aureus anyway, and if you're running Aureus, this really isn't a whole 30% loss of damage share, right? You're really losing 10% because Aureus redirects 20% of the damage. So you're losing 10% of damage reduction for a 70% chance to not get crit. It's massive. I think her survivability is gonna be insane. I think her utility with pillage is gonna be nutty. Gotta watch out for some random teams that are gonna be coming out. I feel like you can also use her in aggressive teams as well, because not only does she defense break now, she also has the ability to really screw over the opponent, right? Really screw over the opponent. Could be a pretty decent anchor, who knows? People use DDR, people use Fumir as anchors. Pirate Captain Flan could definitely fit that role here, I would say. But yeah, much more of a team player. I think overall it's a net positive change. I really wish she had that soul burn for the extra turn. But I think looking at her kit right now, maybe that would have been overkill, right? We'll see though. We'll see in practice. But let me know what your opinions are of Pirate Captain Flan in the comments down below. Again, keep in mind, I love using her, and I am really excited to use her after this one, after this buff. Another unit that I really love, Abigail, right? So let's take a look at her here. She got some pretty minor tweaks, but they're actually pretty major in practice, I think. So Blood Banquet, that is going to be the passive that she has. So the main thing with this meta is that Unbuffable is a very strong debuff. Everyone's applying it everywhere, right? You want to unbuffable the ML haste. You don't want him to get his unique buff. You want to unbuffable all the guiding light users, all the units that can stealth. You don't want them to get go back into stealth, right? You want to put unbuffable on pretty much every unit out there to prevent them from getting their unique buffs and getting all those things going. That's why Peyra is super strong, right? You saw her resurge sometime earlier in the last season. That's why Bihu is still pretty good. You have a lot of utility units, right? Bryceria, fantastic right now. She's built on so many different things. You can be a damage speed hybrid, you could be a super fast opener, 300 speed. It's just quite insane. So anyway, with that being said, there's some units out there that can ignore res and apply unbuffable, and Abigail now can dispel it. Whenever someone takes lethal damage, she will now dispel all debuffs from the target and then grant the immortality and vampirism for one turn. That was the biggest downside of her passive, is that if you had unbuffable, the opponent just doesn't care about Abigail, right? They just kill the unit in the back line, and then they can't get the immortality and it's over. So this is a really good change. It'll make her a very nice utility unit, especially for one of the most dreaded units that I hate fighting now in the recent weeks, BBK. Bloodblade Karen is going to be so strong with this. It's insane, as if she wasn't already strong before, right? But to be able to dispel things like this, right? You can go up against Bryceria and stuff and really not even care anymore, even if they have Ignore Res, Soulburn. The Scarlet Garden, so this is her S3, right? It used to inflict injuries here, and this injuries, right, will go up to 25% of the target's health whenever you use it. Now, you still dispel all buffs from the enemy, right? And you still inflict injuries, still that 25% shenanigans, but now what you do is you actually increase effectiveness of this attack by 50%. Pretty nice. The ability to full buff strip is good. Abigail, now you really only need a little bit like random effectiveness rolls here and there, right? Or you have a single piece that gives like 20 or 30% effectiveness. You don't need all that much on Abigail. So if you build her with like 50% effectiveness and she gets another 50 from using this attack, 100 effect res is very common on a lot of units nowadays in the meta. Most tanks, Blood Moon Haste and stuff like that all run about 100 resistance. You're obviously going to run into certain things like, you know, ML Shu that's running like 200 effect resistance. You're gonna have like people that are running 250 and stuff like that, BBKs and stuff, but those aren't your targets with Abigail, right? You're normally gonna be trying to injury down the bulkier units, so the Blood Moon Haste, the Soul Weavers, you know, the 8 High Winds, the other knights on the teams. This will be pretty nice. I think it's a good change. Very minor, but very effective and very impactful. All right, moving on here, we have Alencia. Again, I said this before, right? She is going to be one of those units from the Awakened Potential update that never got her buff. Fire Ravi is the only one of the 4 up until now, and now Alencia looking pretty juicy. So her soul burn is 10 souls, right? Used to increase the effect chance defense break to 100%, and you decrease defense of the target for 2 turns instead of 1. But now when you soul burn her, she increases the defense break chance to 100%, and she just straight up ignores effect resistance. They realize that, hey, Alencia trying to build effectiveness and giving her effectiveness buffs with the Mind's Eye, right? Mind's Eye used to give 50% extra effectiveness. They're like, that really didn't accomplish much, and, you know, the unit she wanted to debuff, she pretty much just couldn't. It was kind of bad. So, yeah, now she's looking a lot better. Okay, so she also has just a straight up 20% critical hit chance increase, which is really useful. That, I think her EE also gives critical hit chance, which is really nice. The critical hit chance overall on Alencia is really difficult to build. So this makes things a lot easier. I know a lot of people are running things like Ed's artifact and stuff, right? Which gave crit chance like 10%. So you can actually drop a ton more crit chance here. This is 4 max rolls of crit chance, right? 5 rolls of crit. If you're just mid-rolling crit, on average, you're going to be rolling 4 crit every roll. So this is saving you 5 rolls that can go into speed, HP, crit damage, right? Defense. This is going to be very, very nice for Alencia. You save a ton of rolls here. You can gain a ton of stats elsewhere. Now, the thing is here that she also increases combat readiness by 15% when she activates her extra attack, her trample effect. Okay, she still does the injury, but the injury has been moved, right? So the injury here was moved to Mind's Eye. When you get the Mind's Eye buff, you inflict injuries, and injuries increase proportional to damage dealt, up to 10% every time the skill is used. So it's nice. If you couple this Mind's Eye buff, right, just like she did before, with injury set, you are looking to inflict a ton of injury, and you can, in some cases, you know, you end up pretty much taking your opponent to max injury in like a single turn. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, Mind's Eye is going to be very, very nice because whenever you attack, you inflict injuries, right? So your S1, your S3, all of that stuff's going to reduce your opponent's max health. It's pretty good. Okay, and with that being said though, I do predict very soon that we're probably going to see a unit that comes out and counters injury. Because of course Smallgate's going to do that. They're going to like, hey Alencia, you get this cool injury buff, right? And then screw you Alencia, we're going to find the unit that counters you so you're not relevant again for the next 3 years. But I really hope not. Ravi's been pretty solid for me in the meta. I really hope Alencia has a comeback here, because that would be really nice. Especially that the fact that she can ignore res Fulburn on that S1, it's going to be really good. It's going to be really, really good. She also has a little bonus here. So instead of increasing the effectiveness of the caster when she uses her S3 now for exclusive equipment, that's going to be changed so she decreases combat readiness of the target by 20% when she's using her S3, right? Yeah, her S3 is Genesis. Okay, good. So you can push back the entire enemy team by 20% pretty nice. I think, you know, if it depends on how you want to build her and everything. I think still having the utility of healing herself would be kind of nice for just sustaining throughout longer fights, which is what you're probably bringing her into, right? But this could actually set up for some pretty cool combos too. Alright, so moving on, we got the last unit here, Shooting Star Achates. This is a pretty big balance update. We're going pretty in-depth and thorough with these units, right? So Shooting Star Achates, though, thankfully is a really minor tweak. So the main thing is that she used to grant immortality and 2 random buffs for 3 turns. Now she just grants immortality and increased attack. Right? Specifically the increased attack, which is very, very nice, because most people just want their DPS unit to stay alive and then deal a ton of damage. So, you know who's probably going to be used with this? Did I hear BBK? Because it's going to probably be BBK. This is just BBK support. They definitely want to... It feels like they're definitely pushing BBK as like the go-to damage cleaver right now. It's kind of crazy. I see even slower players using like slow A Tywin setups, and you just have this ticking time bomb of a BBK that no one can do anything about, and then she's gonna come and just ruin your entire day. One thing though is that she actually has this change here. So when she pops her Sparkling Star, she actually dispels all debuffs from the ally and herself, and increases both health ratios to the higher of the 2, right? So it's pretty good, I think, overall. Again, minor change, but I think it makes her more consistent. A lot of units who grant random buffs just really aren't good enough to be used in the meta, but we do see a lot of people kind of memeing around with Shooting Star Achates, and now with BBK coming back to the forefront here, I think they're just trying to encourage people to use her some more. This also helps if you're using her for like those Labyrinth runs, right? You can get that increased attack buff on the Euphine. If you're not aware of what the Labyrinth runs is, you have this counter Euphine on her EE that extends buff durations for a turn, so you can run counter Euphine and just go into the Labyrinths and farm a ton of those ancient coins with just Shooting Star Achates and like Euphines and like some buffers, right? It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. But yeah, now moving on here, so we don't stress the video out for too long, we have our last 2 artifacts. So these 2 things, Otherworldly Machinery and Fan of Light and Dark. Otherworldly Machinery here, they just added this increased critical hit chance by 10%, a flat effect here. It is a 5-star artifact, and it does allow you to deal extra damage that targets all enemies. I don't really see anyone particularly using this over something else, but I guess if you have a unit that always does AoEs, you just need to build some crit chance on them. Could be good, right? I guess Yuna comes to mind, is like the only unit I can really think of, because they did make it so you have to build crit chance for Yuna, so maybe this is just to help people out in case they want to use Yuna. I don't know. I don't know how many Yuna enjoyers are out there. If you're out there, let me know in the comments down below. Alright, anyway, Fan of Light and Dark. So after using a non-attack skill twice, you increase combat readiness of the ally with the highest attack by up to 20% if you have it on plus 30. If it's plus 15, you'll increase it by 15%, right? But you also have a now 50 to 100% chance to increase this critical hit damage for 2 turns. I honestly don't know why they made it 35 to 70%. Like, imagine plus 30ing this artifact, then you only have a 70% chance to increase critical hit damage. Kinda not great, right? So the only unit I can really see that's viable for this still is Ahmed. It is her artifact after all, so maybe they're anticipating an Ahmed resurgence. I don't know how that's possible with Abyssal Euphine and Fire Politis being a thing, but hey, near the end of the season, last season, I did start seeing some Ahmed aggro players pop up, so who knows? Maybe Smallgate knows something that we don't. But anyway, that's going to be it for this balance patch notice. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. I'm actually really curious, especially on the Pirate Captain Flan and on the Alencia. Those 2, in my opinion, are probably the biggest winners so far. But yeah, with that being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.